Good morning and good Chodesh and happy Hanukkah. Welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Tuesday, the 30th day of Kislev, which is the first day of Rosh Chodesh Teves. May Hashem help, we should all have a good Chodesh. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of studying Torah. We know this is one of the Rebbe's campaigns. Obviously, this is a mitzvah in the Torah. V'gisa b'yom v'layla. We should always study Torah day and night. And one of the Rebbe's campaigns is Miftzat Torah. We should study Torah. And sometimes people wonder. You come to a class, you learn about things which seem so irrelevant. There's no effect in my life whatsoever. What's the point of studying subjects, concepts about things that is never going to happen in my life? Question: what happens if this guy says this, the other guy says that? What do we do? I mean, why do we immerse ourselves? Why is it so important to study the Torah always? And that's what a Jew does. Any available opportunity, we're supposed to study Torah. And the Alter Rebbe explains that the studying of the Torah creates a unity with Hashem like no other thing that does. And explains like when you any intellectual experience, when you study something, your mind becomes immersed in the concept. And in the same time, the concept envelops you. They say you can you wrap your mind in the concept. So like when you have an idea, an idea enters your head. So the idea is in your mind. But then when you start to work on it, to develop the concept, then your head is in the concept. And you become completely immersed in this. And then once again, when you get it completely, you become completely, you envelop the concept completely, so to speak. And that is true with any intellect. Now, when we're talking about the Torah intellect is something that completely, being that this is Hashem's thoughts, Hashem's wisdom. Hashem allowed us, that great God that we cannot grasp whatsoever. He placed His wisdom in the simple ideas that is placed in the Torah. And when you understand those ideas, you connect to the very essence of Hashem. Let's begin with tzedakah. And let's see inside what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe begins with what we quoted from the Zohar about no mind can grasp God. So the word the grasping, what the Zohar says, you cannot grasp God except when you study Torah. That word, the grasping, gives us the understanding in that unique connection that happens with Hashem when you study Torah. A further explanation to more fully elucidate the expression tfisa, the grasp, in the words of Elijah, no thought can grasp you. Alter Rebbe, inei kol seichel, כשמשכיל ומשיג בשכלו איזה מושכל, הרי השכל תופס את המושכל ומקיפה בשכלו. When any intellect perceives and understands some intellectual subject, the mind grasps that subject and encompasses it. והמושכל נתפס ומוקף ומלובש בתוך השכל שהשיגו והשכילו. And the subject is grasped and encompassed by and is clothed within the intellect that understood and perceived it. And in the same time, is also the intellect is clothed within the subject. Also, the intellect is clothed within the subject at the time of intellectual comprehension and grasping. As we said, this is the second step when you start to process the concept, and your mind is in the concept. Says the Alter Rebbe, using this in terms of understanding Torah. Derech mashal. When, for example, when one understands and comprehends a particular halacha, a law, in the Mishnah and the Gemara, clearly and thoroughly, through strenuous application of his mind. Now his intellect grasps and encompasses that halacha, and his intellect is also clothed in it at the same time when he strives to understand it. So you grasp the concept in your head, wrap your head around it, but in the same time also you're immersed in it when you're trying to understand it. Now, when you understand, we're talking about the understanding, not the regular concept, but you're talking about the Torah concept, the halacha, talking a law of Hashem that Hashem placed in His Torah. This is Hashem's will, and this gives us the gateway to connect to God Himself. The will of Hashem with Hashem is one thing. An interesting explanation was given. Rabbi Steinsaltz writes in his book, when you try to explain to a child an equation, an abstract equation that A plus B equals C, a young child will not necessarily understand it. But when you tell him, listen, here's one apple, and here's another apple, and two apples, and one plus one equals two apples, that he understands. So when he understands the one apple plus one apple equals two apples, he's still the abstract concept of A plus B equals C. Maybe doesn't get it yet, but that's the same concept. The same concept and brought down in a very detailed, very small way in his level. So the same thing in Hashem, and Hashem places His wisdom and His will in simple laws that we studied in the Torah. So even laws that may not be relevant at all, has nothing to do, it doesn't have an effect on our life. But the laws is Hashem's will, Hashem's wisdom. And when we study them, our mind becomes one with Hashem's mind. And this is such a powerful unity. We become united with Hashem. Continues the Alter Rebbe. Now this halacha is the wisdom and will of God. The rationale underlying the halacha is God's wisdom. And the ruling itself is God's will. As mentioned in chapter 4. Because so it has arose in His will. The will of Hashem was, for example, if Reuven would claim thus and Shimon thus, such and such should be the verdict between them. Even if it never did, nor ever will come to pass, that litigation occur over these arguments and claims. In the Talmud, we have all kinds of arguments. Could be that it will never happen. מכל מקום, מאחר שכך עולה ברצונו וחכמוסוי של הקדוש ברוך הוא, שאם ייתן זה כך וזה כך, יהיה פסק כך, הרי כשאדם ידע ומשיג בשכלו פסק זה כהלכה הערוכה במשנה גמרא פוסקים, הרי זה משיג ותופס ומקיף בשכלו רצונו וחכמוסוי של הקדוש ברוך הוא. It says, yet, since it arose thus in God's will and wisdom, that if one person would claim this way and the other person the other way, the verdict will be such and such. So therefore, when one knows and comprehends this verdict, as the halacha set forth in the Mishnah and the Gemara or Paskin, the halachic codifiers, he then actually comprehends and grasps the will and wisdom of Hashem, whom no thought can grasp, nor can any thought grasp his will and wisdom. You cannot grasp Hashem, you cannot grasp Hashem's will and wisdom. And the only way that you can is when Hashem clothes itself in His wisdom and His will in the halachas, in the laws that we study. Except when they clothe themselves in the halacha set before us. So this is one facet of understanding Torah, namely that thereby one's intellect encompasses the divine will and wisdom. Furthermore, says the Alter Rebbe, not only you encompass the wisdom, but you're also immersed into it. His intellect is also clothed within them, within the divine will and wisdom contained in Torah. His mind is encompassed by them. And this is something, a unity that is unparalleled unity. Now, this is a most wonderful unity. In the physical realm, there is no unity similar or parallel to it. There are two things of disproportionate as human intellect and Torah, God's intellect, to become one. That they should actually become one and united from every side and angle. And this is the end of today's shir, giving us understanding why it is so important to study Torah, even things that seem totally irrelevant. It is relevant. It is relevant to our connection with Hashem. Not only that, when you study Torah, it says Hashem looked in the Torah and created the world. So studying the Torah is connecting to the reality, the true reality, Hashem's existence. So it's not just when you study about the moon, the stars, you don't connect with the stars. They have nothing to do with this. But when you study the Torah, since the Torah is the blueprint of the world, then you become connected with everything what the world exists through Hashem's existence through the Torah. So this is the end of the day. We'll see you B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. A good Chodesh and a happy Hanukkah.